So yeah, we've kind of got two problems. We have the one where we still need to, our diocese is already sort of on number 4 or 5 in order. But then if we lose the Pope for a while, that we never know how long that's going to take. Generally speaking, it doesn't take that long, but you never know. I think Francis was pretty quick. I think his took less than a week. But some have taken as long as 4 months to a year. So it depends. It all depends. Kind of once they go inside the locked, sealed chambers, all bets are off, right? At least in my lifetime, starting with the death of John Paul II, because I don't remember Paul VI, really, or John Paul I for that. None of the people who are thrown about as being the next pope has ever become it. So at least generally I don't even bother to look at what people say, because I'm like, nobody knows, right? Nobody knows. They put their list of these are the favorites and this and that, and they all look good on paper, but when it comes down to it, it's what they do there inside.
At least according to the movie, that was what happened.
Well, it's funny because just knowing that it's probably not too long from now, I actually did a short, just 1-page front and back little paper that I gave to the youth minister, everyone in my office, the CCD people, that explains what happens from the moment he dies to the time he's elected. Because people will be asking.
Sure.
So there is a very specific procedure. Yeah. Some of it very interesting and kind of odd in this day and age, and some of it not. Once he passes away, of course, a medical person makes that determination now, but they still run through the ritual. So after he's died, they place him in his private papal chapel, and then the Chamberlain, who is Cardinal, he's from Ireland, Cardinal, he comes in and he has to call the Pope's baptismal name, so Jorge. He's going to call him out 3 times with a minute in between each. And then at that point, he will declare him officially dead, and he will inform the College of Cardinals. Until they are informed, the Vatican does not publicly state that the Pope has died yet. So he sets everything into motion, and then he takes his papal ring, he destroys it immediately, because at that point, you can't sign it. It signifies the end of that Pope's reign. And he does not hit his head with a silver hammer. You hear that all the time, like that even in the old days they did that. That there's no, the Vatican has always denied it, and there's no real proof. I don't know where that came in, but even when I was looking at stuff, I just went by the official things written by John Paul II and others who have modified it recently. But you'll come across this thing that like he gently wraps the Pope's head with a silver hammer to make sure he's dead. He doesn't. Okay, that's a myth. But once he's dead, the ring is broken, and then they do a 9-day. The Noventiale is the 9 days of mourning for the Pope, and under John Paul II's rules that he put into effect, the funeral must take place on day 4, 5, or 6. Has to be on one of those days. In the meantime, while that's happening, he's placed in state. Francis has made a lot of modifications. Instead of most popes have been buried, all of them, at least in hundreds of years, have been buried within 3 coffins. So each one bigger than the other. So the smallest one is bodies in, and there's one, and they're each made of a different material. 2 are completely wooden, and 1 is made of zinc. Francis has said, no, I just want 1. In the old days, this does not happen anymore. Well, I should say the last popes within memory have declined it. So John the 23rd, Paul the 6th, both John Paul the 1st and John Paul the 2nd, Benedict, although he was not pope anymore, and Francis. And that is, they used to embalm the Holy Father and remove his heart. And so the hearts are kept at the Louvre of over 100 popes we have. But the last several have just said, no, we don't need to do that. And Francis has continued that on. The biggest thing Francis has changed is he will not be buried in the Vatican grottos. So he will not be buried in the catacombs. He'll be buried at St. Mary Major inside that church, because that's his favorite church, and that's where he wants to be buried. So that's one big thing that he's changed from the last, because the last 100 popes and then multiple ones prior with a little break in between, the last 100 have been buried down in the grotto. Peter's remains are down there, etc. But yeah, they have the 9 days at which the whole people can come by and venerate the body and pay their respects. During that whole time, the Requiem Masses are being said, and that's all run by the Dean of the College of Cardinals, who oversees that. And then there's just all these little pieces that go in, and then the College of Cardinals are already arriving in Rome for the funeral, and then they stay because at the moment that the Pope passed away, the leadership of the whole church passed to them. Now, in reality, just like our executive branch, most of the offices are in place no matter who's in charge, so it moves smoothly. But they are there, and they have to remain there, and the conclave cannot begin earlier than 15 days and later than 23 days after the Pope's funeral. So during that time, the College of Cardinals runs everything, and they meet every morning for 4 hours to determine any important business of the church as they approach the conclave. And then the whole conclave, most people have heard about, they lock them into in the Sistine Chapel, and only their secretaries, anyone required for liturgical things is allowed there. Even when they leave the chapel, they're all sequestered in their own rooms in, I forget the name of the building, but it's its own building. And again, they're not allowed to talk to the media. They swear oaths of secrecy. They do all these things.
But they do connect with each other, don't they?
Yeah, they connect. They can talk to each other. Yeah, and
how many did Pope Francis choose?
cardinals, I don't know.
Quite a few.
There's a lot. Roughly, though, the number who can actually vote has been pretty close for the last 3 or 4 elections. It's right around 120. Has been those who aren't over age. Once you turn 80, you're ineligible to vote. So you might come and help with you can give your 2 cents worth when people are nominated. You can help with the governance of the church. You may not run for Pope. You may not be Pope if you're 80 plus. That's the only, that's it's not the only restriction. What canon law actually says is any male Catholic fully initiated may be elected Pope. Now, the last time that happened was 700 years ago. But, nowadays it all comes from within the College of Cardinals. But the actual canon law says any fully initiated Catholic male can be Pope. Innocent III, who was one of the most powerful popes who ever lived, the one who founded the Franciscans, the Dominicans, called the Lateran Council, all the precepts of the church we obey, those were his. You have to go to Mass once a week, receive the Eucharist. That's all Innocent III. He's unique in 2 other ways. He's the only pope to ever excommunicate an entire country. He excommunicated England for not accepting his Archbishop of Canterbury, which ultimately led to the English monarchs losing a lot of their power with the Magna Carta, because it gave the nobles the power they needed to force the king to kind of do stuff. And then he also is the only pope who called a crusade within Europe against the Albigensians, the Cathars in France. But on the day he was chosen pope, he was an attorney. So in one day, he celebrated becoming a deacon, priest, bishop, and consecrated pope all at one ceremony. And so, but I wouldn't hold that one. That's not going to happen, right? I don't think anybody I know is going to become like the new next pope. But yeah, and so they can have 4 meetings a day, 2 in the morning, 2 votes in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, with a big break in between them to talk or whatever they need to do. And I forget the time period, but after a certain time period, if they have not elected a pope, they actually take a multi-week break and then come back and start over. and the votes are always secretive. In the Sistine Chapel on the main altar, there's a huge chalice set, and each one goes up. They write the name by hand, they put it in, and they drop it in there. And when everyone's voted, then the votes are tallied and counted right there in front of everyone. And if the 2/3 majority, no one has reached a 2/3 majority, they're burned with a special chemical that makes sure the smoke is black. And that continues until finally one is chosen. And when one gets the 2/3 majority, they ask him, are you willing to accept the office of the papacy? We never know who says no, right? Maybe some have, I don't know. I would find that highly unlikely, just because by that time, at least multiple votes have happened and you know it's coming down more and more if you keep coming up in the running. So you say yes, and then you're required to choose your name. He gets a little bit of time to go into the room of tears, the crying room, to kind of deal with the magnitude that he's just been elected the leader of over 1 billion, human beings in this world. And then he'll be announced by the cardinal deacon. And that's what we always see when he comes out, and he says, Habemus Papam, and then he'll name him for the first time, and he'll come out, and then he'll give his first address to the faithful. Then he decides how much long then he'll disband the college to go back home. And so there's a lot of pieces in between, but they've been doing it for thousands of years now, so it's pretty tight run machine how they all do it. By the way, you'll see these terms: cardinal deacon, bishop deacon. Those are terms within the College of Cardinals. Every cardinal is a bishop, but there are levels of cardinals. Just like there are levels outside of within the cardinal, there are cardinal bishops, cardinal priests or presbyters, and cardinal deacons, because they have different functions within the college. It depends partially on how long they've been there and all kinds of other stuff. So, but don't get confused when you hear cardinal deacons. They're not a deacon. They're all bishops, right? Okay. See?
So what's the white smoke? Because you said the black smoke.
Right. The white smoke means that we have had a pope who's accepted it.
Right, but because you said they burned the ones that didn't make it.
Right. Oh, they burned
That's
those ones
black
too.
smoke.
Yeah, they burned those ones
So
too.
where does the white smoke?
In the old another chemical. Prior to like the 1800s, they did something to they did some kind of way in which they tried to get the smoke to look a certain way, and it was kind of janky, so you couldn't always be sure. But nowadays they have I don't know what chemicals they use. It just says they use specific chemicals. One that will make it definitively black, and then one that'll be definitively white. Although I don't remember because I was too young. One of the authors did point out it didn't work so good at John Paul II, because when he was elected pope, it was so gray that people were like, until the deacon said we have a pope. So who knows? It's yeah. Oh, and the pope is buried with certain things. A bag of coins minted with his face at the time of his ascension to the papacy. And there's something, I forget the name, there's a technical name for it, but it's a silver cylinder with a scroll inside, handwritten. It must be exactly 1,000 words, and it summarizes his life and his papacy in 1,000 words, and that goes in there forever. I believe the dean of the College of Cardinals, I believe, writes that. So, well, it's like when I went to Bishop Flores's, I got to go to his installation. He was already a bishop when he was chosen to come here, so he wasn't ordained a bishop. He was already a bishop. But at his installation, the papal representative, the nuncio, comes from Washington, D.C., and he unrolls this huge scroll. And it is also, to this day, handwritten, and then hand-signed at that time by Benedict, I think it was, that they read out loud. And I didn't know that. It was pretty cool to see that read and all that kind of stuff that goes on. But yeah, so just keep praying for the Holy Father. It does look worse and worse. I know they had to.
Can they keep him alive by
I don't think they're supposed to unless he is specifically asked for that to occur, but I'm not certain. Because I'm not sure. but they said they had to clear him twice just this morning. Well, this morning Italy's time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with a double pneumonia, he wasn't in great shape to begin with. I mean, he's been wheelchair bound for over a year.
And without a lung, with one lung.
Yeah, he had problems since when he was had his problems as a young man or young boy. He had some kind of issue. So, so keep Pope Francis in your prayers. But it does look, without short of a miracle, that we will probably enter a period of what's called sedis vacantis, the empty chair, for a while, probably fairly soon, I would guess. So, okay.
Some time for that.
Let's see. See, there you go. So you got all the stuff about the papacy.
Yeah, you don't have to watch the movie now.
We should make, like football, we should like put up the contenders and like put like
Oh.
odds and who can make it and see
I
who
think they
becomes
do.
pope.
They do.
I'm sure they
do.
do.
They're
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Normally Italy
Yeah.
also declares the same period of time, the 9 days of mourning for the Pope, as a national thing as well, just because of the long, obviously, association between Italy and the Vatican City.